There was a time not that long ago when it was easy to categorize cars. There were sedans and coupes, hatchbacks and station wagons. Bakkies were simple workhorses and vans were delivery vehicles. But how things have changed. These days, those traditional lines have become increasingly blurred. And this new Honda HR-V is a good case in point. It's tempting to think of the HR-V as a scaled-down CR-V, but you'd be wrong. While the CR-V is primarily a soft-roader with all-wheel drive, Honda calls the HR-V an urban crossover. In other words, a vehicle more at home in the concrete jungle than the great outdoors. But don't take that description for granted. It might suit Honda to keep its new compact crossover on the hard stuff, but in reality, many would-be owners will consider the new crossover a viable candidate for some gravel travel, and rightly so. That's because the new HR-V's slightly raised ride height and vaguely SUV-style exterior suggests a measure of off-road capability, even though there's no all-wheel drive to pull it out of trouble when the going gets too tough. To be fair, the Honda HR-V does look a little bit different from the crossover norm. And even though the baby SUV influences are still there, there are some very different and very unique details, including this sloping roofline, also the concealed rear door handle, all of which creates a bit of a coupe-like impression. In that sense, the HR-V could be considered a subcompact interpretation of the bold formula pioneered by the BMW X6 and X4. Used Mercedes-Benz GLE coupe, but the Honda's design is less arrogant and more subtle, with a shape that expresses efficiency and aesthetic appeal. Most of all, this is a compact crossover, which means it looks a lot more agile than its larger and now rather heavy-set CR-V stablemate. The comparatively short overhangs, relatively wide tracks and that lower roofline endow the HR-V with a sleeker, sexier road presence than is usual in this segment. But does it have the go to match the show? We tried to consult some local experts, but they seem too preoccupied to care. And I suppose that buyers in this category are more concerned about comfort and practicality than outright performance. The HR-V is offered with a choice of 1.5 and 1.8 litre engines. Our test car is the 1.8 Elegance, which means it has a 4-cylinder normally aspirated 1.8 litre engine with a power output of 105 kilowatt and a relatively modest torque output of 172 newton meters. On paper, it's quite a peaky unit, which means the standard CVT gearbox will need to keep the revs in the power band to make the most of that urge. Power is to the front wheels only. The CVT gearbox offers manual override via shift paddles, which allows swapping between 6 virtual gears. The result is better than leaving the gearbox to its own devices, but still a far cry from the engagement offered by a manual gearbox or a dual clutch design. Admittedly, CVT gearboxes are efficient and not dealing with a clutch is convenient in traffic, but in this application, the CVT doesn't do the dynamics of the HR-V any favours. With its compact dimensions and relatively low weight, you'd expect the HR-V to feel quite sprightly on the road, and it does get going with a reasonable amount of pep, although it isn't really the fastest car. Of course, that drivetrain with the CVT gearbox, not the most engaging, but it will get from 0 to 100 in 10.1 seconds, 188 kilometers an hour is the top speed, and it easily cruises at the legal limit. From a handling point of view, though, the car always feels composed and predictable. Indeed, the little crossover's road manners are quite impressive, with the chassis offering confident handling and good steering response. Some might consider the damper settings a little too taut, but to me they feel just about right, allowing good communication between car and driver. And once the HR-V has 4 occupants plus luggage on board, the ride quality will become more compliant too. Talking about luggage, one of the potential shortcomings of small crossover vehicles is cargo space. You either have a really small boot but plenty of rear accommodation, or cramped legroom at the rear with luggage space to spare. The HR-V finds a better compromise than most vehicles in its class. There's 490 litres plus of luggage space, and that's with a tonneau cover in place. And if you need more, you can fold the seats flat and have more than 1,000 litres of cargo space on offer. But that's not all, as they say in the classics. Honda's familiar Magic Seat system, which has made the Little Jazz such a popular runabout, is also part of the HRV's interior offering. It allows a tall mode, in which the base of the rear seat is folded forward and locked vertically, leaving a deep, narrow loading trough that can accommodate items up to 1.2 meters tall. By folding the front passenger seat back forward and doing the same with the rear seat, you can also create a long loading tunnel for loading items up to 2.4 meters long. Thus, the HRV is a star as far as versatility and practicality are concerned, elements that form a big part of any crossover's appeal. The Honda also offers an impeccably executed interior with smart finishes and a tactile sense of quality. The comprehensive standard specification features electric everything, a touchscreen-based infotainment system, and a full array of active and passive safety features. The subcompact crossover segment is a crowded place, and buyers in that market are spoiled for choice. The Honda HR-V focuses on quality, on versatility, on practicality, all in a very distinctive and slightly different package. The drivetrain is adequate, and that CVT gearbox does blunt response, but to be fair, most buyers in this segment will probably be more interested in the flexibility than the sheer dynamic capabilities of the vehicle, and in that sense, the HR-V does shine very brightly indeed. The combination of an 1800cc iVTEC engine and a compact body should equate to nippy performance, while Honda's chassis development track record promises a sweet ride and confident handling. The HR-V lives up to most of those expectations, although the engine feels less eager than expected, while the CVT gearbox could be better. A manual option should be included.